So at the height of human empathy and European values, the Dutch politicians working with the European Union has passed legislation prohibiting the people from the Netherlands to produce food. And this is amidst a food crisis. Now, the regulations apparently is supposed to limit nitrogen. You might wonder, like, what the heck does that have to do with global warming? Like, isn't global warming about CO2? And the answer is that this was actually a law that was passed previously, about a decade or so ago in the European Union, where various member states have to protect flora. And the Dutch, I think they have to protect some type of barley or wheat. I don't know exactly what, but they need to have a certain number of nitrogen. And because of that, now the farmers are suffering. Apparently, 30% of the farmers would have to pack up shop. And this is a food crisis, okay? So they're making the Netherlands more reliant on other states. They're making them more reliant on international trade. Probably the land that the farmers will sell is going to be bought up by big corporations. And I will not be surprised, like, once the big corporations buy up all the farmland, then all of these regulations are going to become more lax. So the main problem with this is that there is no dialogue between the farmers and the politicians. The politicians aren't interested in hearing any of the farmers' grievances. They're not even trying to find a solution or a middle ground. They have decided that the farmers have to suffer, which means that the price of food is going to go up, as well as the fact that the Netherlands politicians are encouraging mass immigration. So more people to go into the Netherlands. This also means more pollution. It also means more nitrogen, showing that this is not really about the environment. But it seems that all of this has taken a turn for the comical, where an island is now going to declare its independence on Friday. So this is something that astonishes even me. I don't think that parts of Netherlands were secessionists up until this point. I mean, just so you can imagine how bad the policies that the politicians are putting are like. And not only that, just imagine how unrepresented the people feel because there is no dialogue. And it actually leads to this, which, while comical, might have very interesting repercussions that we're going to talk about in a bit. So, out of dissatisfaction with the national nitrogen and fishery policy, and to reinforce their anger, the island of Texel has taken a step further and they declare independence. The Free Republic of Texel will be thus proclaimed on Friday. They already chosen themselves a prime minister, and while the action isn't serious, the message is. The Declaration of Independence is not limited to words. Apparently, they are going to issue passports as well as other materials to appropriate independence. In addition, a Texel's cabinet has already been formed, and they're going to have people such as the Ministry of Sheep, which fulfills the role of speaking on behalf of the farmers. And the people of Texel do not want to share more than being a famous Dutchman. It will be a big surprise. It is a playful action, but with serious undertones. The national nitrogen and fishery policy threatens to completely disrupt Texel society. Agriculture, economy, and the quality of life in Texel will be completely destroyed. We want to draw attention to this with a public-friendly campaign, which is being conducted, joined by farmers, fishermen, and citizens. So, while this does seem to be a joke, the good thing is that it does make international headlines. I mean, you read about it, it's like, what, Texel becoming independent? Like, what is that? But the question is, and I actually got this asked a lot, like, what were to happen if an island genuinely wanted to declare independence, right? Like, let's say the administrator body of an island would say, all right, well, we're not going to pay taxes to the Dutch anymore, like, we're now an independent nation. Well, in that case, you would see a rehash of what happened in Catalonia, where the Spanish police officers came there. I think there was like an army of policemen, and they beat they pacified the area, right? So all of a sudden, they calmed the spirits down through rational discourse and scientific debate. Alternatively, because this looks really bad on cameras, especially when it's the European Union compassion and the European values, they may also try a different approach. And that different approach could be seizing the assets of the people that are the new government, taking away their bank accounts, locking their ability to do trade with the mainland. So it doesn't necessarily have to be violent, but at this point, there are so many other ways of persuading people not to go haywire, that the army of police officers may not be necessary. Still, it is interesting to see how all of this is escalating, and it's also interesting to see that Canada is looking at this, salivating, and wanting some of that over there. I think Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, wants to reduce fertilizer by 30%. Again, this is going to cause the price of food to go up even higher. The price of lettuce, last time I looked at it, it was $10 a lettuce. I don't know if it actually increased or decreased in the meantime. But still, it's quite high. Like, even if you're a vegetarian and you're like, well, I don't care about eating cow meat. Okay, you don't care about eating cow meat, but when everyone is going to start eating the veggies, then the price for the veggies is going to skyrocket. So, you're going to have a food crisis. You know, you're going to end up with rationing for food. Like, you may have money to buy the lettuce, but it'd be like 1 lettuce per person, sir. So that is not a nice future. Usually the people who vote for this shit, they don't really understand what they're voting for because they're people from the cities and they're like, well, fuck the farmers, who care? You know, farmers are a bunch of white racist bigots anyway. And then they don't know. It's like, oh, well, why is the price of food suddenly skyrocketing? Why can't I find food in the supermarket? Why do I need a ration card to buy shit? Well, you voted for this, right? This is because people in the cities, they lack an education. They think that the food comes from supermarket. It transports there with Star Trek technology. And that's pretty much their understanding. You know, electricity is something that comes from the wall. They don't teach these things in school anymore. Like, the concept of supply chains isn't being taught in schools. I mean, in schools you learn your LGBTs, but you don't learn the actual useful shit. Like, for example, where does electricity come from? I mean, sure, you have an electric car, but where do you charge it? And where does the electricity that charges the car actually comes from? You know, like, this is things that most people don't even know. What is inflation? How do you do your taxes? They don't teach this in school. They teach hyper-complex numbers and other important issues, right? So I'll be interested to see how this pans out, because I found it to be a very shocking turn of events. I mean, again, you know, here in Europe, we just don't have pieces of land declaring independence. I mean, this is very rare. The last one that happened was Catalonia, and we saw how that ended up. So, and they didn't declare independence. They wanted to have a referendum, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But throughout human history, you know, the only people that managed to declare independence are the ones that can back it up by guns. Like, for example, the United States from the British Empire. You know, it's like, okay, we're independent. The British sent there an army, the Americans fought it off, and then you're independent. That's pretty much how it's done. But in this case, you know, it's a little island with elderly people. I'm curious to see what the Dutch will do, because now they have to acknowledge it, right? Like, up until now, they pretended they don't acknowledge the farmers. They pretended they don't see them. Well, now they have to see them, and it's going to be interesting when it comes to the response. Let me know what you guys think, though. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.